Whoa.
All right, welcome back to Wine Fringe. My name is Jill Smedley,
I'm Jake Pottinger.
and we are here to talk about a 2025 recap of harvest and marketing trends for this year, and also make our predictions for next year.
And we have Shai Van Gelder here.
That is true. We have Shai. Welcome back, Shai.
Thank you very much for having me.
Of course, always a pleasure.
So, the reason I wanted to do this, we talked about doing this episode originally, and then I was like, people probably get tired of listening to me talk about these things, and you've been in the cellar working on your project, your new project. So, we're always, you and I just talk about the industry, just, how wonderful a growing season, how terrible a growing season, how contracts are never met, and that's kind of where I was like, we should have Shai on this episode too, because, he's a different winemaker, he's got a different perspective. I do work now mostly all over Virginia, but Shai gets fruit from all over Virginia, and him and I, we banter back and forth. But before we really dive into the growing season, I thought we would kind of maybe talk about some of the marketing things that, like, what 2025 kicked off, and it was like, all right, this is what we're going to do, and these are the trends that everybody needs to be watching for, and the wines that we need to be drinking. And then some of that fell through, some of that was true. I made my speculations. I think early on, I had mentioned sparkling wine.
Yeah.
Another reason to have Shai on the episode today.
I wonder why.
So, Jill, take it away.
So I actually am not going to focus on styles of wine. I'm just going to focus on one of the big problems in the industry and how it's going to impact us next year.
Okay.
One of the big trends happening right now, obviously we talked about this in previous episodes, is the low-no alcohol trend. And you and I talked about de-alcoholized wine and how that's gaining some traction, and then also the THC scene and how that's kind of taking over the market as well. And one of the things, interestingly enough, that we're seeing is that, and specifically I went to a wine and beer store, and they said that they're losing a certain percentage of wine consumption through wine purchases through their store, but they're seeing that actually translate into their THC beverage drinks. He was saying that his beer sales haven't shifted, it's only his wine sales that have shifted, and I asked him why he thought that was, and that specific change, the decrease in wine that he was seeing was the same proportional increase with the THC beverage sales, and beer unchanged. And he said the reason he thinks it's happening is the single servings. People are consuming less, and with a wine bottle you're kind of stuck. Like, you have 4 to 5 servings in a bottle, and people can't just have a glass, and if they want to have a glass each night, it pretty much goes bad after 2 nights.
Is that also kind of reflective of liquor too, and liquor sales? Because I know that that's pretty much been stagnant, if not also they're seeing a drop in their overall sales data too.
I haven't really focused on liquor too much. I was mostly focusing beer and wine and THC, but yeah.
Well, I think the liquor thing, though, bourbons and whiskeys, the sales have risen on those over the last, 24, 36 months, because there's a huge third market that's opened up now where people are buying collectible bourbons and then selling them aftermarket. And that's kind of caused those sales.
Oh, fun.
Yeah, you're talking, I think I read it was like 7%.
Okay.
But still not enough to go, spirits are rising, wine is falling,
Right.
damn you spirits.
So it's ultimately more options are spread across. So we're seeing a reduction somewhere in wine sales because there's an increase in these other options and these other sales.
Fun trends that are happening.
Well, even with spirits, like, I collect a few bottles of bourbon and whiskey that I've collected because there's something special, and I've invested the money into that, the $80 to $150 into that, and I'm able to open it and enjoy it over months. I can have a drink a night or a drink a week kind of thing and try something nice. Whereas with wine, like, to your point, you open it up, you got 48 hours to kind of kill that bottle.
Yeah.
Which, if you love wine, isn't that big of an ask.
No, for people like us who drink wine regularly, it's not a big ask. But if it's someone who's drinking 1 glass or 2 glass a week,
right,
and following those government recommendations, then
or they're
your eyes are rolling so hard I could hear it.
If you're paying that $80 and you have 48 hours to drink something and it's just you, that I could see that being tough. But back to the THC products
Mm-hmm.
and to the spirits and all this stuff. We kind of talked about this last season where it was mocktails and options.
Yeah.
And that's, and, you know, me, I don't believe in options. I think each producer needs to hunker down, have 6 to 8 products, and that's it. And they go, this is
You
what I
believe
do.
that in so many other areas other than just wine, and you think about it in restaurant format too. You say,
Everything.
I should just have like 8 options at a restaurant,
Right.
I should have 8 options at a store. I mean, it's...
People don't really like to have that many options. You hear it all the time in the tasting room. This is overwhelming. They've got too many
Well, you
options.
lose
I
your
don't know where-"
identity as a producer when you
Right.
have too many offerings too.
So I think people are trying these things, the
Mm-hmm.
THCs, the mocktails, the no-low products. You know, they're trying these things, but I think they're gonna come back.
Yeah, I
It's
agree.
like the ancestral or the ancient romance of wine has been around forever, right? So
Right.
people are just, we're not in a state of, hair on fire because we're seeing a downturn in the wine consumption. It will eventually come back because it's wine, right?
It
That's
is.
the theory.
But then we have, the decrease in wine consumption is so drastic at present that we see all these wineries now going for sale because they're just not getting the foot traffic. Large wineries like 868 and Cana, like those are just a couple, but
Sure.
they're
not
selling
going out
off
of
their
business,
They're
but
not going out of business, but yet, right?
Well,
You put your business for sale before it goes out
all
of
right.
business.
So you're talking about a couple of different things. So you're talking about the oversaturation of the wine industry.
Yes.
You're talking about the country being in an unstable economy right now.
Mm-hmm.
You're talking about the changing of wine drinkers from generation to generation.
Yeah.
And it became cool to start a winery 10, 15 years ago. It was a cool and easy thing to do.
Yeah.
And, you have these millionaires, they buy all this property, they start this big tax shelter, they make all this wine, and then, of course, we can harken back to your favorite line,
Winery isn't an experience anymore.
Right.
Which is to my next point.
Well, wait, hold a second. You've got all of these things.
Yeah.
We're going to see a reset of the wine industry.
100% agree.
The big guys that can't maintain the infrastructure will eventually have to close their doors or sell. The small producers that can't get past the state lines or can't get international recognition are going to probably close their doors. It's the wineries that are doing something niche, very focused, something that is
They've differentiated themselves.
right.
And that's where we come back to, where wineries open.
Right.
They think winery is an experience. They create basically a cookie cutter option, and they think because they made a different logo, they think because they have different color scheme, maybe a different aesthetic interior, that's enough to differentiate themselves. And yeah, they make good wine, but a lot of people say that they make fine wine and they just make good wine.
Well,
Right.
That's a whole.
That's a whole other topic, but
But I would say that as a large point to this, we're going to see wineries close, and that's unfortunate.
Yeah.
And we're going to see new and exciting wineries open, hint hint, and then we're going to
with
to
a
see-
focus.
with a focus, and we're going to see consumers' opinions change on what they're buying, and that's
Yes.
because. Hopefully more producers will focus, and also the price points are going to be everything going forward. Price point will be everything.
Okay, so I'm going to segue, and now we're back on track. So these big wineries are selling off, and so
Right.
these small wineries are saying this happened. Wineries that we thought were successful, that were doing great business, who were getting awards and competitions, they think, they're paying for marketing to be done in these print and online magazines and things like that. They're doing everything, quote, right.
Mailers.
Stop. No, not mailers. They're doing everything, quote, right?
Yeah.
So these smaller producers are going to see these big ones start to go under, and they're going to do what I call is panic marketing. And so they're going to look at every free vehicle they have at their disposal. They're going to look at social media. They're going to look at free event calendars and things like that. And they're going to scrounge and start posting things on socials. And it might not be correct. And I have a point to this, and I'll circle back to
Yeah.
it. They're going to panic and start posting whatever they can on socials, which what my feeling on that is, like, if you're posting, it's better than not posting. But there's a lot of constraints that we have to operate within, and I'll elaborate on that here shortly. And then you also have them, really kind of scrounging and trying to do these different events and finding their identity and their brand. And that's something that we've spoken about before. These wineries don't have an identity. They really don't have a brand continuity throughout their entire experience. And I'm cringing as I say experience, and I promised you I would say it less this season.
Experience.
Ugh. But, so with the panic marketing on socials, ABC and TTB came out with new laws and regulations about how you're allowed to advertise alcohol. You're not allowed to advertise someone consuming wine on screen. You're supposed to kind of allude to it, that it's happening, but they cannot actually drink on screen when you're posting. And there's other things that you can and can't say. You have to link, if you're talking about a singular product, you actually have to link that product to any of your social media pages. So if I say, hey, we're talking about insert name of wine here, let's just say a butterfly wine, since we're at the butterfly winery. And I don't link that to the page that has the alcohol content, it doesn't have our address on it, and things like that. More granular information about the wine that the consumer has to know that you would see on the back of the bottle, essentially. I could get written up for that.
So more control.
Yeah. So there's
More control is kind of like making a Facebook or an Instagram post with a cola.
with a what?
Yeah, that's what
They're basically
Essentially.
requiring a label
Yeah, so
requirement
you have-
for socials.
Yeah, for socials. And even influencers are held to this same standard. If they're advertising
Wait a
on your
second.
behalf.
Wait a second. Who's monitoring this?
Okay, so I sent you an article a couple weeks
I
ago,
know you did.
and I told you,
Government oversight.
I said the bots are coming for us. It's going to happen, and it's only a matter of time. And actually, they've started implementing bots into monitoring how non-alcoholic beverages or de-alcoholized products are advertised. And this came to fruition, I think it was in Australia, and they said 48% of the producers weren't abiding by the laws and requirements to advertise those products. If you were to implement that in Virginia or in the United States, it would light up like a Christmas tree. Because there are companies that are advertising people drinking right on screen. If you look at anybody's advertisement on a singular product, no one's linked it to their profile. It is only a matter of time until everybody has some sort of ticket or infraction on their hands.
Now that you're saying this is reminding me of the Shane Gillis commercial where he's sitting with, who's that rapper? Now I'm drawing a blank. Mm-hmm. They're sitting outside with Bud Light and they're like enjoying themselves. Mm-hmm. And he literally turns to the person on camera and says the exact same. We can't actually drink, but enjoy, pretend to drink.
Yes.
Right? Pretend that you're enjoying yourself. And they're just sitting there having a good time, and they're like, glug glug, like very facetiously, like
well, then you have
breaking
companies,
the third wall. Like it.
Yeah.
I didn't really put the two together, but it makes perfect sense
and
now.
And then you have companies like, so you're also not supposed to be encouraging overconsumption. And then you have companies like Double XL, like the wine brand. I'm not trying to call them out, but I am going to call them out. Who posted a 10 a.m. and a 10 p.m. option of their wines, and it was like what you're drinking in the morning versus what you're drinking in the evening. How is that not advertising overconsumption?
Well, that's advertising day drinking.
Well, yes, which would be considered overconsumption.
By who?
And therein lies the interpretation of that.
Well, we're going to be talking about this kind of stuff
more
later on in the season.
Yeah.
When we start talking about laws and who's backing these laws and
Yes.
who's creating these laws and who's pushing these laws. And we're really excited. I'm really, really excited about this one.
I'm so thrilled about that, yeah.
We have a terrific guest coming for that.
But
So why does all of this matter? What does this have to do with panic marketing?
what does this have to do with panic marketing? People are going to go and panic market
Right.
their products, right?
Okay.
And then they're going to do everything wrong.
And then the government's going to shut them down?
Yeah,
And they're going to
inevitably.
sell even less wine?
Yeah.
And the government's going to get even less taxes? Yeah, that sounds like the government.
I mean, they're trying to eradicate wine anyway, so.
So is there a place for anybody to, like, influencers and stuff to find these laws and, like...
Yeah, I
decipher
can link it.
Okay.
Yeah,
I
for
think that
sure.
would be interesting, just because...
So I'm happy to link the ABC laws and the TTB laws that we have to abide by, the advertising laws that we have to abide by,
Right.
that even influencers are held accountable to.
I mean, I've been seeing it on Instagram, trying to develop a following on my wine Instagram. I've been following influencers in like Spain, Italy, and France, and on their site it says must be 18 or older to follow the site. So that's also something that probably also has to happen.
Come
It's
up,
going to
yeah.
get like for influencers in the
matter of
United
time.
States, it must
Yeah.
be 21 to, how do you even check that? How do you verify
There
that
are more
through?
Meta came out with more constraints for teens.
Right.
And actually, like, they have, like, the teen accounts that just came out. I guarantee, with the
There's
keywords
going
and
to be
everything...
a young adult for 21 and under,
Yeah.
or 20 and younger.
I guarantee when you offer up your age into the system, that they're going to take that, and then you're only going to be recommended age-appropriate content.
Well, I'm willing to bet this is all going to be a subscription service, like the blue check mark thing that you're going to have to pay for.
Well, yeah, it's
This is all
guaranteed.
gonna be coming.
So, I believe that is true, because Meta, last year, as of November 1st, they didn't allow third-party platform managers to ingest data anymore from
I
their
remember
webpage.
that.
And remember, we were in the middle of a grant, and part of our deliverables, I had to use that to...
I
it's
just
still
remember
salty.
the meltdown that you had over that.
Oh, full
Because
blown.
it was out of the blue, right? It just happened.
Well,
out
they
of nowhere.
said, yeah, it happened out of nowhere. I came in one day and it was like, all right, unable to ingest data. When you're looking at your social media management platform, that's not completely unusual to see. You just refresh the connection and then it's like, all right, able to ingest the data, whatever. No. And then it went on for 2 weeks, and then it went on for a month, and then the notification came that Meta will no longer allow third-party social media platform managers to allow you to ingest that data. So yeah, it's coming. Meta is going to take basically a monopoly of the market and say, here is your social media management platform. Because they're already doing it. They have Meta Business Suite. It's only a matter of time until you integrate in LinkedIn and Twitter and everything like that.
Well, it's a matter of time before the internet is just completely empty of people, and it's all just bots and AI, and nobody's looking at anything.
Where's your tinfoil hat today?
Okay. Say what you will. So, what else you got, Jill? What other cool... what is your prediction for 2026?
2026. I think, like I said, we'll see sloppy marketing happening.
Okay, a lot of sloppy marketing.
A lot of sloppy marketing happening. I think we'll still continue to see the THC beverage sales increase and wine decrease. I think that come fall, winter of next year, I think we'll see a shift and wine will start coming back.
To me, the THC thing is a trend.
It is.
It's probably
but
gonna
trends
be a
go on 18-month cycles. Have you noticed that?
No, that's interesting. Why is that?
I have no idea, but I'm just saying.
Okay. Shai, what's your takeaway on THC wines? You think it's a trend, or...?
I think that with the way that Americans have really accepted with open arms, especially the younger generation, millennials and younger, have accepted that like normalization of marijuana, that it is entrenched in the culture, that I think that's something that we're going to see not really being a trend. I think it's going to be something more long-term. It's something that's,
Taking
being
on its own
from,
quarter.
living in California, seeing the effects of, almost decade plus of dispensary beer, not dispensary beers, but like beers with 3 doses that you could buy from if you had your prescription. I'm thinking back to like a Thanksgiving almost, a decade and a half ago, where, we were sitting around Thanksgiving and instead of having Gamay or Pinot Noir or dry Riesling, everybody was passing around one of my buddy's dad's prescription 4-dose beers. And like that was a while back, and it's just had the time to catch up and also be streamlined to deliver the exact dosage. I think that it's going to be something that's going to be here to stay, not just an 18-month trend.
And we'll still, so on now moving into the wineries, we'll still see the larger wineries kind of go under, don't you think?
I think that they're going to try and lean. I think what they're going to try and do is they're going to somehow try and lean into this THC thing, the same way that Philip Morris is trying to do it too.
Yeah.
I think that they're gonna utilize that.
Do you think we're going to see wineries that have? I mean, we saw the wineries taking on farm breweries and incorporating that into their lineup. Do you think there's a possibility that we'll have wineries, breweries, and THC? Seltzer. I don't know what a seltzer place is called.
Depends on the state legislature and the state laws,
Well,
right?
Going to vary by state.
Yeah, I mean, you can probably already find, and I'm not going to say probably, you can find like chef's pairings in DC with wine infused with THC, because I was invited back when I was working at Barrel Oak to actually produce a product that had THC in it, but the legality of everything, and also the fact that I didn't own my own winery prevented me from doing anything like that.
Yeah.
But like that was almost 7 or 8 years ago. So I can only imagine that there's wineries that are doing that, or actually outsourcing, providing bulk to somebody that can actually have their own, create their own bonded winery or bonded license to accept it and to blend.
To me, it sounds like the THC thing is probably just going to be another subcategory of the new innovative products that really aren't new or innovative.
No, just like hard seltzers. I mean, they're here to stay. People have that's lowered its popularity.
Sales are definitely down.
They're down, but I don't believe that it's going to be something that goes away. The popularity has come. I mean, it was trendy 4 or 5 years ago, and now it's lowered its popularity, but it's still a very large portion of the market for.
I just don't think seltzers are long for the world. I still don't think it is. I know it's a subcategory, and I know that when you're going from 18 to 21 and you're going to steal something from your parents, it's probably going to be a seltzer. I can kind of see that being a thing that's always present, but is it going to be a strong industry? I just don't.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, seltzers, for someone who has gluten issues, like, it's always an alternative at some party. So because it's always an alternative, like you said, it's not ever going to be, like, super prominent, but it'll always have its niche.
Sure.
The same thing with ciders. I mean, Angry Orchard became really popular when I was in college because, especially around the period of time where people were getting a little bit more conscious with the celiacs and gluten.
Oh, yeah, that was
So it was a huge selling point and a huge boom for Angry Orchard. Angry Orchard was in every single store. It was like almost overnight. And like people started gravitating towards that. And then all of a sudden, after the ciders, the birth or the rebirth and the rebranding of the ciders, then came the seltzers.
Yeah, now you almost hardly ever see Angry Orchard anywhere.
Right.
Except for in my refrigerator at home.
I mean, cider has definitely become a thing now, and that's kind of cool.
Yeah,
The
it's a
cideries
thing,
are
but
huge in Virginia. I won't say huge. I'd say it's growing.
It's growing, yeah. But I always think it'll be like, I think it'll be like third to beer and wine.
I don't see cider separate from the wine industry. I think it's more wine than it is beer, in my opinion. And I think it rides the coattails of wine.
Yeah.
It's like
that's what I'm saying. Like, it's never going to be.
And then you fit in the cidery because that breaks up the.
Because maybe you stopped at an orchard and you picked some apples.
I mean, Virginia grows a surprising amount of apples.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So.
But yeah.
What else you got, Joe?
That's all I got.
No other predictions for wine trends?
Wine trends? I mean, sparkling is still increasing in popularity.
Sparkling. Well,
yeah,
we'll come back
rosés are always increasing in popularity, which I know is one of your favorite topics.
I just bottled one on Sunday.
Okay, well, cringing as you're saying that, so.
Right. It's interesting.
Where do you see low alcohol going? Is that going to be something that continues, or is that going to be something
I think
that...
for sure.
Yep.
I think at least for the next couple of years, as we're riding out this, like, all this research. For those of you guys who can't see, I'm using air quotes, all this research coming out that uses the big C word.
Yeah.
You know? People are gonna think that low no alcohol wines or de-alcohol wines or whatever, then the alternatives are going to be healthier. What they don't realize
But
is
they're not good.
they're not well. They're
It's
one,
just
not
not
good,
good.
and two, you and I have looked into the process by which they're created, and it's
Nothing
more
about
manipulation.
those.
It's
Yeah, it
nothing
doesn't.
healthy.
Well, that's the thing is if you're removing it through RO or you're doing a spinning cone column, you're not removing ethyl carbamate, which is one of the major components of your carcinogens. Right. That's going to be what most people look at, and it's not doing anything. You're not removing that when you're doing reverse osmosis, and you're not doing anything using most of these dealc processes. So it's going to be you're having wine light, but it's not doing anything for the carcinogens, right?
Yeah.
I mean, okay, alcohol, if you're talking about it, the alcohol being a solvent, yes, it is, and it's a toxin, everything else along those lines. The alcohol content's going to be reduced, but like by a factor of not even half at this point, or not even one-fold?
With de-alcoholism?
Yeah, I mean, sometimes you're
almost
looking at
zero.
almost
Yeah,
zero.
it's almost zero.
Okay.
Like we had that
Maybe
one.
0.5% and 1.5%.
There was
I think
one-
it was 0.
what was the wine that we had that was like an egg that was supposed to be a 0 on the front? You know which one I'm talking about.
I try to forget that tasting.
Unfortunately, I can't because there wasn't enough alcohol in it to forget.
Remember it not being. I don't think I think just like a duels is still a thing. Mm-hmm. I think 0% wine is always going to be a thing.
But here's the thing: just get freaking apple cider that doesn't have alcohol in it.
You mean apple juice?
Yes, essentially.
Yeah. Sparkling apple juice. Who makes the sparkling?
Martinelli.
Yes, just get that. It's more flavorful. It has less manipulation, I'm assuming, to it. Yes.
It's just apple juice.
I couldn't tell you how. I could assume. Yeah, I could make my assumptions, which is just cold pressed, UV pasteurized juice, and then a bunch of sugar.
Okay.
And probably some metabisul, or probably some.
Oh, definitely contains sulfates.
Well, sulfides, and then also it's got to have sorbate, probably.
What I hear is
sorbate or Velcorin, depending on where they're making it, right?
Okay, Shai.
All right.
You have to drop the V word.
Well, it's a wonderful word.
It's your favorite word right now.
Not really. I like bubbles.
So, okay, well,
we'll still see decreased consumption. We'll see decrease in wineries, and we'll see an increase in these alternatives coming out. But I think wine will have its day again.
I think wine will never not have a place.
I think once people realize that it's what you and I came back to before, Rich. When people were like, oh, wine or alcohol causes cancer, all that stuff. We're talking about wine specifically, like either the narrative has changed or the chemistry has changed, and we know both have.
Right.
So you always talk about low intervention and how that means we have less chemicals and how you're not changing the actual integrity of the product itself.
You're just touching it less.
Exactly.
Which means you're probably less likely to get
whatever crap else is in
scary illnesses from my wine or Shai's wine, because we don't use scary products.
Yeah.
So the growing season 2025.
Go for it.
So I know that here in now we'll talk about this in two different perspectives. I'll give my quick summation of it, and you give your quick summation. So from the clients that I work with here in Virginia and Chrysalis, what we saw was single degree cold days at the beginning of the year, right? Mm-hmm. And then bud break happened. We saw stunted growth from probably too cold temperatures. I know that spotted lanternfly is a scourge, and everybody's heard about it. I don't think we need to dive too much into that. But we're starting to see the long-term effects of that. Stunted shoot development. It seems like there was a lot of lateral kicks in vineyards this year, just way more than usual. Vines tended to bush out more than they tended to grow out. Like you had short shoots. Yields were reduced coming out of right away coming out of bud break here at Chrysalis, and then and a few other clients said the same thing. And then it rained during flowering. That automatically, I estimated it. Spotted lanternfly was probably 20%. Then the winter was probably an additional 10%, and then the rains was an additional 30%. And so we were already seeing like 50 to 60% reduced yields before we even got to fruit set. What's your takeaway on that, Shai?
So I'll add 2 points to what you said. I agreed wholeheartedly with what you said.
Right.
I'll add that we had late season frosts, right? Especially down in like Charlottesville area, Central Virginia, Southern Virginia, all the way so much so that like it was after Mother's Day frosts this year that completely eviscerated some vineyards with their with their Chardonnay and with their earlier out whites.
That surprised everybody this year.
It did surprise everybody. I remember talking to a buddy of mine, and he said he had 90% kill on his Chardonnay. And that was kind of reflective of what we saw throughout the vintage. We'll talk about that later. But that was one of the things that I wanted to add. And then also the second one was that, going into the spotted lanternfly and looking at the past, 4 vintages, 3 of those vintages by Virginia standards, those were drought-like vintages. So that also puts a big stressor on the vine going into dormancy, especially in a vintage like this too, where we had, I mean, if you think back to it, and now we're talking about current times, but like if you think about it, we haven't had many rain events after harvest in comparison to last year.
No, last year
Like
was terrible.
last year we had that 11 days of sideways rain where everybody was scrambling to pick, that kind of pick or perish moment in Virginia. But then after that, there was no rains for a while either, and then the vines had time to recover, and the grounds dried up. But now the grounds are so dry, the vines are. You look out in the healthy vineyards, and you can't tell whether or not it's fall colors or if it's water stress.
Yeah, you can. I mean, I was driving around the vineyard last Friday, and I mean, it was defoliated vineyard, full dormancy, cool. Yellow leaves, what's going on?
Right.
And then the one block over, I mean, just 4 rows over, green.
Green, yeah.
And it's like, what the hell is going on?
So those are the two things that I would add is that you had your, I mean, you started out the season
cold
with the, I like to say the fat bear, skinny bear analogy, right?
Okay.
It's going into hibernation, what's coming out, right? So you have your stressed vines from years of drought. You've got the spotted lanternfly, depending on where you were. You had either your first year of actual scourge and pestilence, or you had your second or third year. So that really affected how everything got shut down. You're also looking at the early-ish bud break.
right.
Couple that with the early season frosts and the late season frost that we ended up getting.
I think we were 3 weeks early here at Crystal's Vineyards, 3 weeks early on bud break,
Yeah.
which we had never seen. Now, we have a really great vineyard, so frost damage isn't something that I worry about, and also it's Mother Nature. You just don't worry about it as far as I'm concerned, which is an unpopular opinion, but I don't worry about frost, and I just tell Freddie to go home, and he loses the sleep, and I sleep fine.
Yeah.
You also are dealing with a volume issue.
I do have a volume issue.
So I feel like you're less worried because if you lost some, it's not the end of the world.
Sometimes.
Versus someone who's restricted to a certain...
Yeah, that plays a part in it, but, with things like Albarino, Petit Manseng, those are varieties that grow really well in Virginia until... And that's what we don't talk about and consumers don't know enough about. Like, they're the cool varieties right now. Everybody wants to make wine from them until they break bud early, get frosted on Mother's Day, get spotted lanternfly, get rained on during flowering, and then go through a drought. And then right as the vines are stressing out about drought, it just pours rain and they suck up all that rain, and then,
Yeah. So, like to your point and what you were saying earlier about where timing of rain and wind during bloom, right? We had nearly every vineyard that I hiked this year, from Charlottesville all the way down to from around the Charlottesville area into Loudoun County and everywhere in between. I was seeing the same stuff. It was very small or very low yields
right.
because of the rain and because of all the stressors, right? But also we started seeing a lot of colure, and we also started seeing a lot of mélange, right?
Okay, pause for the listeners.
No.
And this is, it was all because of the rain and also the stress, right? We have colure because there was all that rain.
And colure is?
You tell me. You
No,
like to
you tell
dissect
me.
it. Colure is called shatter. Essentially, it's when you have unpollinated flowers. So you have a flower that gets aborted because the self-pollinating flower does not have the capacity to be pollinated and turn into a berry.
Right.
So you have clusters that don't look like they're full.
Yeah.
Like spotty. Like my spotty, right? Spotty clusters, and then you also have mélange, which happens when you have oversaturated soils, and you have a lot of moisture and a lot of water that's going on. So when the fruit ends up getting, or the flowers get pollinated, they have a delay in their in how they actually get set up. So you don't have the necessary amounts of nutrients and macronutrients, micronutrients that go to the flower, so that they are delayed in how they develop. So you have things that are called chicks and hens, right? So we saw that all throughout Virginia, chicks and hens and shatter everywhere,
so
because of
these clusters that were like, you'd have 5 or 6 berries at the top, 3 at the bottom, 2 on the left, 1 on a shoulder, and then just stem. And then you would also see like fully developed berries on a cluster, and then tiny little green peas all over the cluster that were never ever going to get the nutrients and the things they need to turn into a real grape.
So the ones that actually turned into a grape, what was the fruit quality like?
So it's still pretty, I don't know, still pretty early to say whether or not the fruit that I brought in this year, despite all the stressors, I'm very happy with.
Yeah, great way to evade the question.
Well, I'm very happy with what I brought in. I think it's, in my tenure here, it's the best Norton I've ever seen at Chrysalis, honestly. And the Viognier was good. It wasn't great, but I'm still happy with it. The Petit Manseng that I brought in it was made every single winemaker that I brag about it to drool, and it finished dry. So, I have that over the rest of Virginia right now. It's still one thing I'm like clutching to. Like, those are my pearls this season.
Yeah.
But, did the rest of the vinifera get brought in, and does it look good? Norton's great this year. Petit Manseng turned out
but
well.
Norton is so resilient anyway.
It was definitely a Norton year, I'll say that.
Well, that's
Isn't
also
every
the other
year
question
Norton
is
year?
like, what, for me in my experience, this is the first vintage that I haven't, seen red for fermentations.
Right.
It's 17 years of no red wines. So I have no experience. I have no data points to go based on that. But like, I'm starting to see patterns now that I've been in Virginia for a decade now, is that, it's either the every decade or the every 5-year mark. And we're starting to see these patterns. And, I almost, let me rephrase this, with the lack of reds, I kind of see 2025 vintage as almost an encore performance of 2020, where all of the early whites came in low sugars, low acid, high pHs.
Yeah.
Right. So there was when I was in 2020, when I was making wines at Barrel Oak and growing fruit for Blue Valley, that was, some of we had our first harvest was at 3.6 and 16.5 bricks, and that was Muscat Ottonelle, right?
It's just Muscat.
But it's kind of Muscat, but like still, like the pHs and the sugars were not, what you'd normally find in a normal year. And granted, 2020 was definitely not a normal year.
See,
but
I'm thinking about 2020, and I had a great year in 2020. That was the year that we made that terrific Viognier, and it was perfect. It came in 3.4 and 26 bricks, and it fermented smoothly, and a beautiful wine. It won a lot of awards. I didn't have quite that same experience that you're talking about.
Yeah.
I'm thinking 21 to me was kind of that year that you're describing.
Okay.
But maybe that was just the site.
I think your site. Well, it wasn't just my experience too. I remember talking to a lot of different winemakers across and grape growers, and they were saying the same thing with 2020. And you and Holland Farms is a different site entirely. It's a special place. But it was just a repeat performance for me. That's what really 2025 looked like.
It was a strange year. I mean, you're just like you're describing, low sugar levels, high pHs, like the 3.6 and stuff. So what did every winemaker in Virginia do this year?
Yeah, probably. I mean, chaptalization and acidulation.
Oh, the dirty word.
No, just taking the terroir right out of the wines, right? But that was one of the nice things that I didn't really have to deal with.
And before we dive into that, because I know you're itching to, chaptalization is the addition of just white sugar to must or juice.
And what's the chemistry behind it?
I don't know. I don't do it very
No, okay.
often. In fact,
So
I-
Dr. Louis Chaptal in French, the Frenchman coined that's why it's called chaptalization.
Oh.
Yeah, so he figured out that in order to raise potential alcohol, you can add sugar, and through cleaving, he's adding sucrose, which is unfermentable, and he's through the actual the acid media of wine, it cleaves the sucrose into fermentable glucose and fructose.
Yeah.
So
most
we've got.
winemakers don't know that, Shai.
Well, now they do.
Luckily for us, we don't have a lot of winemakers that listen.
Okay. But all thanks
that's
to
awesome.
Dr. Louis Chaptal.
And
Yes.
chaptalization is legal in Virginia, but it's not legal everywhere, correct?
It's
not legal in California,
don't think
right?
It's legal in California.
So we talked about this on the California, the East versus West Coast, and I still have not looked into it. But my understanding of it was that it's something that people do, but they don't really advertise it in California because it's a lot cheaper than what's legal, and which was concentrate. And the people who lobbied for the fact that it was concentrate instead of sugar are the people who control a lot of the wine industry in California. In France, for example, you cannot use sugar unless it's a really bad year, and there's an official decree
Right.
that says, okay, we have a shit vintage, everybody use sugar. Right.
Oui. So,
And that segues into it being a winemaking year.
yeah, so I personally think it was a winemaking year. Like,
Oh,
you
absolutely.
had to be the winemaker that, and this is, and I'm going to throw shade on winemakers here in Virginia a little bit. You don't have to add sugar. You don't have to. There are other techniques and there are other methods, but it's also acceptable to have a lower alcohol wine.
Right, as long as you strive to keep everything within that balance, and you can
Right.
obtain that balance.
Right.
Well, and why not lean into that as an opportunity to feed into the low no alcohol trend?
That's one thought that I was going to kind of say is like, okay, this year we made
Especially
a
with
10%
whites, 'cause you
rosé,
get it-
or we made a 10% white. Sure. What baffles me is and I'm not going to name names, but there are winemakers that were bringing in their fruit at like 16 to 18 bricks, right? So you're looking at 8 to 9% alcohol, and they're dumping in 50-pound bags of sugar to get it up to 24 bricks, so they can then start the winemaking process. And then they're complaining that their wines are stinky, or they have H2S, they smell like rotten eggs, or they just don't taste right, or they're very oily on the palate. And it's like, and to what you were saying earlier is most winemakers, they add the sugar, they don't make the acid adjustment, they just do the sugar, and that's always been something that baffles me. Like, just don't do that. You can adjust alcohol by just adding alcohol later.
Correct.
And that's something that winemakers know they can do, but they don't do it, and sometimes it's cost prohibitive. Other times you can just blend in wines that have higher alcohol to elevate it. But
You can also get a sweet spotting machine,
you can also bring
and
in
you can do some RO to bring, not necessarily to bring out any VA, but you can also increase your alcohol and concentrate your flavors that way as well.
You can also just cook it. And, evaporators were a thing.
Yeah.
That was all the rage in the 80s and 90s in California, were the evaporators, where they would take low alcohol or low bricks juice and put it in this machine, and they basically cook it off, evaporate out the water, and they raise their bricks. That was a thing that they used to do. And I know that, there's a winery down in North Carolina that actually has an evaporator. It's really cool, and they grow Riesling, and they use and it never gets above like 14 bricks, so they evaporate it off, and that's a technique in my book. That's not necessarily still a manipulation, but it's not quite what I would say is an over manipulation. But they're very transparent about it, which I also appreciative of, and they think it's a really cool thing. They use that one piece of equipment for that one variety, so that's also kind of interesting. But we saw these winemakers make all these manipulations this year, and then that's one side of it, right? But as winemakers, we should be looking at this vintage and going, okay, based on what I'm seeing in the vineyard, these are the wines that I could make with techniques. And this is the perfect opportunity to talk about what you're doing, Shai, because you got this new project. We got to go to Petit Domaine and enjoy that with you and hear about that and taste all the wonderful sparkling wines. But you got to work, I got the pleasure of watching you work, because I didn't help. I got to watch you work in the cellar making your sparkling wines here, which was a lot of fun to actually have another winemaker around to poke fun at. Shai is way more bougie than I am. So he finished his harvest like...
I don't think you register on a bougie scale.
Yeah, I don't think that I register on a bougie scale either, but if would be, if there was one, it would be exponentially more bougie than you, that's for damn sure.
I'll take it. So you're making sparkling wine, and we're going to do a whole episode about this, so we're not going to give away too much, because I think it's really cool what you're doing, and I'm all about it, and Jill and I talk about it all the time. But you brought in... To me, this was not only a winemaking year, but it was a sparkling wine year, more so than anything else. What's your take on that?
That was also, I mean, it was dependent on a site too.
Right.
So we sourced fruit from Charlottesville, we sourced it from a mountain vineyard, and then also we sourced fruit from Middleburg AVA, right? Or Middleburg. And of those areas, some of the places, and this is kind of uniform across across the board from what I was talking to and hearing from people and growers and winemakers down in Charlottesville, is that their early picks, they were coming in really low bricks at like 15, 16 bricks, and they were sitting at like 3.2 already. Ideal numbers for sparkling picks are going to be between 8.5 and 9, or 18.5 and 19.5, and then you want to keep it under 3.2.
Right.
The magic number being 3.2 because it's gonna be preventative for any kind of native ML if you want to forego ML.
Right.
And you just want to have it also at 3.2. So if there's any kind of cold stability, or if you're doing any tartrate reduction, that's actually going to reduce your pHs instead of increase it. Also, 3.2, better color stability.
What he's saying, folks, is that the higher the acid, the less bad things happen.
Correct. You don't have to add nearly as much SO2 when you're doing things, so it's more stable in the juice and also in the wine stage, less likely to have negative things happen to it. So a lot of people were, in my assumption, a lot of people were harvesting based on acids and then chaptalizing. Why? Because the sugar's cheaper than acid. And when we're in the sparkling winemaking, depending on the direction and the style that you want to do, you want to minimize how much flavor you're actually going to be getting. So the longer you mature the fruit, the more those flavors are going to be ingrained and entrenched in the pulp juice, which is supposed to be the most neutral. So we ended up picking some. Our fruit came in, and we did a little we did an acidulation, but then there was also the fruit that came in from our mountain vineyard site, which was almost picture perfect numbers, right? And they had the site was very dominant in limestone soils, so it also, and greenstone and limestone and bluestone, and it really did a wonderful job holding and retaining its acidity. So we brought fruit in at almost 19 bricks and just under 3.0 pH. Nothing really needed to do in terms of winemaking manipulation there, and I come from an enological background that taught us that there's a multi-million-dollar industry of wine additives that make your wines better. So, yeah, with a B, that's correct.
But I will say that I'm proud of you, because I know that when you first came into the office and you started setting up for your harvest, that you brought in all these different products, and we were talking about because I haven't heard of half of the stuff you brought in, and we would talk about it, and you didn't really use much of it.
No.
And, that's because you worked with really good growers, but you also seem to be putting more into technique than you are putting into additives.
Right. And that's one of the things that I was looking at in terms of, what can we do in terms of control. to really try and, the idea behind it, our mission of Petit Domaine is to create intentional and incredibly high quality sparkling wine in traditional method. And if I can steer that towards a Virginia terroir, then try and bring that out, right? The best champagnes in the world come from different areas and different locations that you can specifically pull aromatics and flavors out of, even through secondary and tertiary aromatics. You can pull from the location, right? Just as an example, like if you're tasting Vertu, you get this flinty, chalky, mineral salinity from their Chardonnays, right? And you can pick that out of a lineup.
Right.
And I want to be able to do the same thing with Virginia wines. And it's going to be a little difficult to do it unless we have, right now I'm figuring out, based on the locations and the sites that we're working with and not having too many manipulations, what those sites are going to be bringing, what that sense of place is really doing.
Yeah.
And I honestly could not really do that in the other locations that I was working at, because there was a lot of manipulation. There was a lot of, VR super tannin. There was a lot of superfood. There was a lot of, noblesse or redulous, and I could rattle off all of the names of the Scott Labs catalog, right? And we were adding those in there. We were adding the wine, or we were adding that into the wines, because that was the way that we could get better or higher quality wines. So we thought, right? And that was, not challenged, and we didn't do anything to challenge that mentality. But in terms of sparkling, everything was just in. We started harvest right around the second week in August, and all of the fruit was pretty much brought in before the end of August.
Yeah, you were done, and it was a month. It was barely a month too. I mean, you had some long days. You had some 12 and 14-hour days, but
honestly, there were some 18 hours,
twice,
and there were a few 18 hours in there, and that's harvest. I mean, it goes without saying. I'm sure I'm really happy that I remembered to turn off the lights so that Jenny didn't kick me out of the cellar. Right.
That's right. That's right.
But yeah, it was very different of a growing season. Like I said, I worked with reds, but they weren't for red production. There was no extended maceration. There was no carbonic maceration. There was no, extraction. Right. So it was really nice to see that, and I really appreciated the abbreviated harvest so that I could spend more time with my family. And I do have to take the time to thank my lovely wife, Ashley, for really kicking ass this year, and also every year that we've been together. Yes, shout out to the better halves that really make the wine industry happen.
Yeah, right? And I'm sure Ashley will listen to this. Thank you, Ashley. So it's definitely a sparkling wine year. Yeah? No? You think it was a good year for sparkling? A lot of people are doing it this year.
I think a lot of people are doing it because it's a really good wine. I think that, if you look at the way that we're reflecting sales and what that trend line is doing, it's the only segment in the wine industry that's actually showing growth. And whether or not that's
true.
Whether or not it's because somebody has one or has two or has like a Frizzante or a Pet Nat, people are really, trying to have and offer a bubble option because it is seen as the festive. It is seen as like a little higher end. It's seen as something that you can get a little bit more bang for your buck on.
And when people are drinking less, they're looking for that shareability of a bottle, and that's something where they're going, like you said, they're going to celebrate. And then those rare opportunities where they are drinking, even the people who are drinking less, they're going to opt for a sparkling option.
Well, I think that it's becoming almost mandatory this year that you make sparkling wine.
Or you bring in a sparkling.
Or you bring in a sparkler. Mm-hmm. And consumers are actively seeking it out now, and that's something that I've seen.
And what is it, like the wine spritzers. Mm-hmm. That's another thing people are asking for. Anything with bubbles.
Yep.
I think it's because it's again, it goes kind of that concept of seltzers and cider and THC infused products.
They're all sparkling.
Well, it's not the sparkling. It's just another option that is just
fair.
Carved out a nice little segment of the industry that stands out. Obviously, stands out from everything else in the wine industry. I think when I was in college, we did sparkling wine. That was kind of my one of my passion projects was to do sparkling wine, and I went down to Georgia and I made a lot of sparkling wine. But I remember talking with the professor, the enology professor, David Bauer at the time, and he said that he always felt that the Southeast is missing the opportunity to do sparkling wine. And that was back in like 2016, 17. He's like, that's where the future of the Southeast was going to go. And so for me, this year, watching you make your sparklers this year and bring in all the fruit for this, it to me, it was just a self-fulfilling prophecy because I kind of believed what he was saying. And I was a dumb college kid, and we all believe everything our instructors say, but, I immediately left college and went and made sparkling wine, and it made sense down in Georgia. People loved it. And then, I came to Virginia, and you hear murmurs of it, but it was like from 19 to 2025, it was just immediate sparkling wine production this year. Everybody went to sparkling. Nobody is doing what you're doing, though, which is strictly sparkling. And we'll talk more about that. I think we've gushed enough about sparkling.
So I do have to put a little note in there that I do have to shout out to Claude Thibault of Thibault Jennison, who's doing the 100% traditional method. And Emily Hodges of Veritas and Virginia Sparkling Company. They're doing it, but there's no 100% traditional method
Virginia.
plus the experience and the tasting room and the overall experience that is sold with the sparkling wine.
I think
right? That's what really differentiates Petit Domaine from the other people who have really started the journey of of sparkling wine and traditional method production in Virginia is that we are adding that experience package of being the specialist in the area that also delivers something that is as luxurious as the products that we're creating.
Well, Jill would tell you that being a winery is not an experience anymore. And you're making sparkling wine, and I won't say you're trying to become the sparkling wine producer of Virginia, even though you totally are. You're setting your sights on one specific thing, and you're doing that.
Correct.
But they're associated, like what he said. He's saying, we're doing sparkling, where it's going to be luxury. We're selling a lifestyle with the wine itself.
But that's the thing, is Petit Domaine, and we really should not give too much away.
No.
But we've established the sparkling wine is fantastic. Like Jill and I have had it. We're being honest. It's just really great sparkling wine. And we've tasted the stuff that you've made this year in the cellar. All really great. Excited to do that and taste that with you when that time comes. But the other half of Petit Domaine is the experience.
Yeah.
And it's a ridiculous experience. It is not like anything else you will experience here in Virginia at this time.
Man,
correct?
we could really take shots with you.
Well, that's how many times? How many times?
I mean,
was
it's
it?
like the Virginia wine episode that we did, and I said experience so many times that I cringed every time when I was editing that episode. But I hear what you're saying.
But that's to Shai's point.
It's to Shai's point.
Agree.
Like I said, they're selling a luxury lifestyle that comes along with the wine.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. We'll talk about it more.
It's fantastic.
But yeah, going back to the initial question about like, was this? I don't think that I don't think that I did. I actually answered it. I kind of beat around the bush there. This vintage, I think, was a little bit more challenging for everybody, but it was a lot easier for sparkling. I think that looking back on the decade of Virginia winemaking that I've done, I think that in hindsight, I think every year was probably a good sparkling year. And, I could probably attest to that in 2016 when I dabbled in Petit Manseng traditional method. And like it was just, the acids are spectacular. It really boils down to site. It really boils down to site and clonal selection, especially for Chard, especially for Pinot Noir, and that's going to be where we're really going to start seeing, a boom. Talking to growers who actually have Pinot Noir planted in the state, mainly they are planted for red wine clones. And red wine clone, you're looking for color and anthocyanid development. You're looking for, smaller berries, a little bit more concentrated, earlier or later ripening. You're looking for a lot of different flavors than what you're shooting for in sparkling clone. Most people who are growing Pinot Noir in the state, the handful of, the 15 growers that I can think of, most of them are growing Pinot Noir so that they can produce a red, not a sparkling. And then when they decide to do a Blanc de Noir, or they decide to do a Brut, they're using those clones harvested earlier. I think that, the future for sparkling right now is going to be find these wonderful sites that are undeveloped, talk to growers that we can work out long-term lease agreements with, where they are going to be doing pilot vineyards of one row of sparkling clone Pinot Noir, one row of regular Pinot Noir, and seeing what we can get away with, and telling them, hey, your site is ideal for pushing 4 tons per acre for Pinot Noir, which is what I'm going to be shooting for my Pinot Noir program, because I want that lower sugar. I want higher acid. It's very different wine growing. It's a completely different beast, right? We're looking at, instead of dropping fruit in order to increase your pH and to increase your sugars and get all the flavors concentrated, now I'm trying to spread that around.
Yeah.
Not necessarily with Chardonnay, but maybe I think that's what the game is going to be for Pinot Noir, as opposed to some of these sites that are 3,800 foot elevation or 3,200 foot elevation that are cropping at 1.5 tons per acre, getting beautiful, absolutely stellar fruit, high elevation sites that retain their acid, and they're getting made into red wine.
They're so rare, though.
They are.
So the way he's talking about this, folks, makes it sound like everybody in Virginia is now doing Pinot Noir, and the truth of the matter is, everybody in Virginia wishes they could do Pinot Noir, because what Shai is describing as a site that's ideal for Pinot Noir, because it would be, doesn't really exist here in Virginia. And if it does exist and they're making wine, they're not sharing their grapes.
Correct.
And they're going to make that one, they're still only going to make one good Pinot Noir, 1 in 10 years at this point? It's just, Pinot Noir is a little too, I just don't think it's going to work outside of sparkling for Virginia.
Yeah. I think that you're right. I think that it has to be, it's very site specific. Just to, reiterate what Nate Walsh said about the Chenin Blanc that they won an award for over at the Loudoun County Wine Awards, right? Said, don't grow it. This works out for the site over at Bethany Ridge. It will not work necessarily at your site. It will not really work. It's it's unlike Albarino or Petit Manseng that can grow relatively well as you have relatively well-drained soils. But it's very site specific. Pinot Noir, the same thing, right? Yeah. There's growers there's a grower out on the Eastern Shore that's growing Pinot Noir at about 5.5, 6 tons per acre, right? And he's selling it for an affordable price at around 1,100 to 1,200 tons, or $1,100 to $1,200 a ton. And it's really nice in terms of the price, but you're getting what you pay for. Right? And I don't want to be, personally, it's the kind of fruit that I would say, why would I want to buy Pinot Noir just to buy Pinot Noir? Right? I don't want to be doing that. I want to be sourcing the best quality fruit so that I can turn that in for sparkling.
Right. So but this is 2 different conversations now, because you're talking about the rest of Virginia is trying to grow these terrific varieties and make these terrific wines and follow these trends. And, and we're all kind of sitting here saying that Virginia is going to start to produce a lot more sparkling wine, and it's going to require growers to change how they feel about growing these things, and there's always this competing desire to grow Pinot Noir in Virginia, every client that I talk to goes, well, can I grow Pinot Noir? And I don't even let them ask it anymore. I just go, no. Before you ask, no.
Well, you could grow it, but it won't grow well, right?
But if I want to push a trend here, since we're talking about the future of Virginia and growing seasons and stuff, I'm going to tell people to grow things that people want to drink that their site allows.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, but okay, so you're going to tell them to grow those things, yes. But it takes how long for a vine to be productive?
About 4 years.
Okay. And by that point, maybe we're seeing a different trend come to fruition.
Yeah, but if Pinot Noir is not going to grow on your site, don't plant Pinot Noir unless you're making sparkling.
Yeah.
So we can add that exemption. But, you know, my takeaway from this vintage was I think it's a sparkling era. But as you're saying, and I agree more to that point, is that every vintage is a sparkling vintage here in Virginia now. We do have the climate for it. We can do sparkling wine, whether it's with Viognier or Chardonnay or some hybrids, or, you know, it's with Pinot Noir if you have that site or you're choosing those clones. I agree with all of that. That's one thing that I think we're all going to see next year coming in. When consumers get their hands on bottles of 2025, I'm calling it now. It's going to be oily, or it's going to be heavy and viscous from the sugar ads. The acids are going to feel off, or on the same tasting menu, you're going to see really nice Virginia sparkling wine. I think you're going to see those types of things.
Yeah.
Or if you're
you've adopted the Jim Law approach, and you didn't potentially you took a page out of 2018. Didn't want to throw Jim Law's name if he made reds this year, but like this was a year of ignorance, right? I don't actually work with reds.
Right.
But like I would have relied on my 2018 or my 2024 vintage experience, which was I would have made a lot of rosé. Right? And I know you don't like making rosé. I know that you're not a big fan of rosé, but to your point even more so, why make a red if it's not going to have to if you're going to have to overly manipulate it? Why are you going to subject the wine or yourself to all that battering?
Well, we both know that my opinion, and everybody knows in this room, my opinion on these things is, if you can't make a red wine, don't make a red wine. But if you can't, if your fruit is bad, just don't make
wine. Right.
If you have to over manipulate your wines to make it something that people will then pay money for, just don't make wine. It's cheaper not to make wine and just eat the loss than it is to make a product that you can't sit on. And this is my point that I've been trying to build to, is that we have an oversaturation of wineries in the country at this point, but everybody's overproduced. Right? Everybody's made too much wine because they're in these vintages, the 14s, the 18s and stuff, where they've been forced to make rosé, they've been forced to make this, they've been forced to make that, or they're experimenting with this, or the trend is pet nats and natural wines, and we're going to make piquettes, or orange wines are making a comeback. And so they make all these things, they sell for a second, and then they overproduce on it because they're trying to predict these trends for the future. And all it's resulted in is huge coffers of case boxes that we then build forts and throw bottles at each other, and we have wine bottle fights. That doesn't actually happen, but it could at some point.
Yeah, you got to have a real good shield.
I think wineries need to be okay with running out of a wine from a vintage.
Yes.
I mean, if you run, I see so many wineries being like, we're going to hold this, we're going to hold this, we're going to hold it, and then it doesn't sell.
Yeah.
Give yourself a case limit. I don't care. Just get the wine out the door at this point in time.
And even more, that's a solution to the problem. But to Shai's point, and everybody in the Virginia wine industry knows that if Jim Law doesn't like a vintage,
he just doesn't make it, right?
He's not going to make it, or he's going to make less of it. Mm-hmm. I mean, he might do something different with it, but he's not. I've talked to Jim about this, and I've heard him say, if I don't like the wine, I'm not putting it in a bottle.
Right.
And I think all of us in the industry need to start adopting that mentality. Like, I'm not happy with this. Why am I bottling it?
Well, that's where I agree, and I can see, and I lived that point, but as a winemaker versus a winery owner, I had to concede that sometimes the business must go on. The show must go on,
Well,
right? And
always
this is
true.
where that like methoxypyrazine and Cab Franc thing that we talk about. I think you've told me that Luca has mentioned. If you have to make wine, or if you have fruit, if you have unripe Cab Franc, why are you making it if it's going to have green characteristics?
Right.
Like, you're doing Virginia and yourself a disservice.
Always my point. Every time somebody makes a bad bottle of wine, you hurt the industry as a whole,
Right.
and you force consumers to drink weird things like THC infused products.
Yeah. I agree. I could not agree I could not agree more.
I think this is a good year for those things. I think next year you're going to see.
So no rosé from you.
No, I didn't do a rosé this year.
You didn't do a rosé affair?
I did not. Oh, I did do a rosé.
You did do a
It's
rosé
hardly
affair.
Rosé. It's basically like it's Blanc de Fer.
Blanc de Fer.
But
New wine label.
new wine label. But I think the wines that you're going to see next year are you're going to see not a lot of reds. And if you see them, they're going to have weird alcohols. Of course, we're all allowed to lie about our alcohols, so consumers probably won't notice. I don't think the quality is going to be there next year for the vintage, and I'm worried about that.
Because you were saying the chemical ripeness and the physiological ripeness weren't.
Well, for us especially here at Chrysalis, it definitely was like mismatched and inverse of each other, and again, like I have my own techniques that we apply, and we just mosey through it.
Yeah.
Other wineries, they fall back on the catalogs and the multi-billion-dollar industries of supplies and additives. Some producers skipped the vintage, or a lot of producers went the sparkling wine route this year. So we're going to see a lot of sparkling wine. I just real quick, I want to cover some other future predictions though, because I know Shai and I were talking about this the other day. The new technologies of the vineyards, and I'm sure everybody knows electric tractors are coming, and AI tractors are coming. But the new thing right now that's currently happening are the drones in the vineyard. And I personally think putting a robot in the sky with propellers and carrying a tank of chemicals is just a bad idea. That's just a silly bad idea.
I have a new podcast episode idea specific to the whole AI and GPS tracking.
AI in the industry.
Keep going.
But Shai, you're the only person that I've talked to that one shares a similar opinion on this as I do. But you're the only one that's actually seen the damage it does. I mean, the work that it does. Sorry, go ahead, Shai.
So I think we're not quite there yet. Virginia is not quite there for drones. The spray programs that they cover are, in my limited experience of hiking 4 different vineyards that utilized drones this year, they would probably only be good and utilized up until the vines hit the top catch wire. And the reason for that is that there is very, very limited penetration in the fruiting zone, or even in general. The amount of actual spray chemical that ended up hitting the indicator papers.
Right.
The spray indicator papers that we put throughout the fruiting zone and also into the canopy, it's very good on the surface in the upper canopy, not so good as soon as you get, maybe a few centimeters or inches inside the canopy, and then once you get to the fruit, it's non-existent.
Yeah, so once you build that canopy depth,
yep,
and the fruit is, developed your shelf and stuff, the chemical's not actually getting to where, that's what matters the most, right? So we want to put chemicals down in the vineyard that kind of protect the vines from diseases and a little bit that respond to a growing season.
correct. So if it's
sprayer,
something,
can I ask a question?
Yeah.
yes,
With the drone, it sprays from the top, right? And
Right.
with the tractors, it sprays outward, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
it depends. Most most consultant answer ever is it depends, right? You have
Yeah.
some sprayers that are air blast sprayers that will penetrate through and it will spray
Okay.
over or through, but then you also have some that have boom tubes that will spray down as well.
Okay.
There's, that's where it really depends on the sprayer. But the penetration for your sprays is a lot better when you're using an actual tractor than it is from the drone. The drone is
It's
propelling,
yeah.
it's propelling the sprayed droplets that are ionized or that are atomized with the actual blades. So it's not a very powerful blast, the same as like a Chima or the Venturi system that they use, or an air blast system that's pushing stuff out at like 17 to 28 miles per hour. Right? This is almost like a pushed mist fall is what the drones that I've seen are doing. Plus, it's not getting that active penetration, which is what really is helping out with combating powdery mildew, for example, right? If it's not a systemic product and it's just a contact fungicide, and you have something like sulfur, for example, you're spraying sulfur on your vines. That's good for protecting. It's not an actual systemic. So if you spray that from the top, you're only protecting your upper canopy, right? So what I was seeing when, during bloom, we had a lot of rain and a lot of humidity and a lot of everything. Downy mildew was rampant at the beginning during bloom. And so was powdery mildew. And the vineyards that I hiked that did regular spray programs with the tractor, I didn't see any powdery mildew. Only in vineyards that I hiked that had done the drones did I see powdery mildew in the fruiting zone. And to be honest, like there were a few vineyards that I was scouting that I'd said I don't want to use this quality fruit because it's already powdery's already in it in the vineyard. So they're going to be dropping the fruit, and how much is that fruit? Unless they're throwing oxidate on it, and then that's another story altogether. It just wasn't really up to Virginia.
Well, yeah, we've established a quality now. We're a big deal state for wine production, and then we introduce drones, and they're not doing what they're promised.
They're
the
not
intention
doing
behind them is to what? Mitigate labor?
A lot of
automate. Pretty much.
Automate, yeah.
It's supposed
What's
to.
the cost difference between that and running the tractor?
It's right now. It's more expensive.
Okay.
Based
And
on
you're getting a less effective.
It's
spray.
not as long. So it's not as long of a spray program as you normally would have to spend. The equivalence is about 8 hours on a tractor for
20 acres.
8 hours for about 13 acres sometimes. And you're cutting that time. It's the cost. The time savings is there, but the cost is a little bit more expensive, especially if you're looking at only having to depreciate your tractor, the diesel, and the spray chemicals. Your spray chemicals are going to be the same rate of addition, so that's going to be negligible, right? It's the time of the operator, and most of the times the people that I have talked to that have utilized the drones, they're looking at the drone program so that they can free themselves up so that their time can be spent elsewhere, right? So that's where the real savings is to them. They don't mind paying a little bit extra. The problem is it's inefficient. Its inefficiency is once you get out of, the first 2 months of growing season, right? Once you're into like May, and bloom comes around, and you're spraying only with the drone, then that's problematic. So when you're at the beginning stages of your spray and your shoots are 6 inches long, you get excellent coverage. When you're at even 12 to 24 inches,
But that coverage isn't any better than spraying with a tractor.
Correct. But at the same time,
anyway, you're saving yourself 2 months of sprays.
You're saving your operator that month and a half, 2 months of being on the tractor.
But we're trying to replace human beings at this point. That's what we're also what I'm failing to paint in the picture is that there's still the drone operator. Right.
The drone operator still has to show up and run the drone and actually guide it through the system. So
Right.
there's one person that's still working. It's now no longer just that
It baffles me
tractor
that
operator.
GPS is not caught up to
They're
this.
working
where-
on it.
Yeah.
They're working on
Right.
it. It's all coming, right? AI's coming. It's all coming.
Yeah.
In the vineyard, I won't say in the cellar.
It's
but-
in California. I mean, it's not here in Virginia,
Right.
but they've been doing AI farming in California for viticultural practices for the better part of a decade now.
Right.
Right.
But again, like this is always my argument when people ask me, like, how is AI going to affect the wine industry?
It's going to affect every part of it here soon.
It might affect the sales of it and the marketing of it, but what makes wine so unique
Is the human
is
aspect.
the human aspect. And you can program all the
We
robots.
say that
and
with
AIs.
writing too, though.
Yeah.
You know, journalists, it's
and
the
everybody
human
hated
aspect
Taylor
of it.
Swift's new album because it was AI generated.
Oh, I didn't even hear about that.
Yeah. So it's supposedly back and forth. Sorry, Swifties. But
Tinfoil hat, break it out.
my point is that it's fine to replace the human in a situation where they're dealing with chemicals. I'm kosher with that,
Yeah.
right? But we're working towards eliminating that completely. Just no human in the vineyard spraying, no human in the vineyard pruning. Like that's what we're trying to build to, right? We're trying to create
Automate,
machines.
mechanize the
Sure.
vineyard experience
And
so
it
that
saves the business money, right?
In theory, I mean.
And then the idea is, okay, so now that we're not paying people to do this, the price of wine should drop. It ain't gonna happen.
no, it's not.
No.
Because this equipment costs hundreds of thousands of dollars to then change your vineyard to the infrastructure that would support automation.
It's going to be years yet until that
You'll
becomes
never
more
see the
cost
price
effective.
drop. You'll
Yeah.
never see it. There will never be a price drop because of the introduction of AI. It's never going to happen, and we all need to stop fooling ourselves about it.
Well,
You're eliminating a person.
I need to get you guys in touch with my old professor who did a fully mechanized vineyard right across the street from Mondavi in Napa, and he'd be able to tell you more about everything that went into it, from optical eyes that he would tow behind him on a tractor to being able to just do everything. It was a 14 or 15 acre vineyard with only 2 people.
Yeah. And
That was it. Everything else was mechanized
But was the
pruning.
wine cheaper in the end to the consumer?
So that is where I would have to defer to him because
Right.
I don't know that information. I want to say that reading some of his research papers, that the fruit price was correlated to the middle range of Napa Valley fruit for a premium location, very close to Tokelon vineyards.
Sure.
Right. And other vineyards that I can't really, I probably shouldn't have said Tokelon, but I did anyway.
Right.
I didn't sign any NDA and he didn't tell me any of this. It's just that I can see the pictures on the posts, right?
Right.
So it would be interesting to see and to either just talk to him
That
about.
would be interesting to talk to.
If it could increase the profit margin, that would help
Sure.
to begin with.
But we're talking about, see again, the conversation is how do we increase the profit margin for ourselves, not how do we, the wine industry is
Okay,
seeking,
pause.
how do we put wine into the consumer.
I hear what you're saying, but so that wineries aren't a non-profit organization anymore.
I understand. I like this discussion, but I think part of the problem is you hear all these older folks that have been drinking wine for decades and decades longer than we've been alive, and they'll tell, oh, it's so unfortunate that you millennials can't have the nicest wines in the world because they're $1,600 a bottle now, and I paid $18 for them. Well, okay, change it. Sell your flagship wine, $20 a bottle.
Yep.
Buy a case, but we'll sell every bottle in the case at $20 a bottle. Put that amazing wine in
the hands of people, yeah.
and then you change the dialogue. And if the argument there then comes, well, it cost me this much to grow it. If I was automated, it would cost me less. But we all know that even if we introduce machines and AI and all these silly little things, and we start to eliminate and encroach on the human component of it, nothing gets cheaper. It's not going to get cheaper. We're talking about increasing our profit margins. We're not talking about putting wine into the consumer's hands.
Right.
That's the problem.
It's going to be cheaper because it'll be cheaper to produce because if you buy that $150,000 machine, right? Within 3 or for the autumn or the mechanized harvesting, right? If you buy that now it's no longer 150. Now we're talking about closer to $1 million, right? Depending on the size of your farm, within a few years you pay that piece of equipment off because you're no longer working with the $20 per hour laborers who are spending, who are sending 25 different pickers to go and breeze through a pick in 10, 15 hours, right? That's one variety. You look at the real costs there and you're recouping those losses. But yes, you're absolutely right. I don't think that the consumer is going to see it. The people that can afford those pieces of equipment are going to want to take and maximize their profit margins when they see those numbers. I think that, to your point, what you were saying earlier is, put the money where your mouth is. Go ahead and say, charge $20 a bottle for your best stuff. I feel like everybody is saying that. They want to do it. They're not going to. And there's no interest in doing it. It's more of a virtue signaling of the of the people who are trying to come up with solutions. It's the same concept of as what was happening in Seattle this is getting political, right? This was the same thing that happened in Seattle a couple years back where it was just like we want to be incredibly fair and welcoming to all the homeless people and all the people who are misplaced and don't have places to live, but not in my frickin' community. Right? It's a very similar mindset there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's the same thing. Like everybody's kind of it's a standoff. Everybody's talking about this. This idea of mine is not a new idea.
No,
it's just calling people out on the carpet. Like I think that AI and automation of the industry is an important point. It's getting hard to find labor. We could change the entire story, right? We could start teaching younger people about agriculture again. We could pay them properly so that they stay incentivized to build into the agriculture. Then we have more professionals, more qualified people, which increases the quality of the fruit, which increases the quality of the wine, which increases the tasting room experience, which increases the marketing and the desire to purchase these products. That's really what could change the easiest and fastest. But we care about profit margins, and so it's going to result in panic marketing.
Yeah, panic marketing, and it's the Band-Aid fix for a long-term issue instead of creating a system like what you're saying to actually fix the whole problem.
Right.
We're in the Band-Aid solution kind of season.
Right. Now, that said, I also like what you're doing at Petit Domaine. It's a high-end experience. It's high quality, it's focused, it's intentional.
Yeah. That's the thing.
That.
Focused, intentional. And that's where, like, panic marketing, we were talking about this. And then, everybody doesn't know what their brand is, so they're trying to do all the things that isn't in line with their brand, which is something that you guys aren't doing. You're saying, this is who we are, this is the luxury brand that we're trying to sell.
Yeah, so it's worth the price point.
It is.
But you guys are also...
Because it's consistent.
But you're also managing the production, and you're investing into the people, and that's how you're building your brand. It's not just... A label and a snazzy tasting room. It's here's the people that we're investing into that want to build this brand and be a part of this brand and like this brand, are excited about this, and it's a lifestyle is what it's becoming, which is cool. That's what's going to resonate with consumers as we go along, and I think that's going to be the trendy thing. I mean, everybody's favorite winery has a T-shirt. I mean, honestly, like...
I disagree with that, but okay.
A good T-shirt, right? If I go to a winery...
You like the whole, you have a sticker, you have a T-shirt, you have the bag. You love the branded swag.
I love swag. All winemakers
swag.
The swag.
Yeah, as long as it's free, right?
Yeah.
But,
and nothing is free, though. It's never free.
Chateau Marron has a fantastic T-shirt. The cat thing, I'm cool with wearing that in public.
Oh yeah, I do have that one.
Brand.
The coconut raw one.
Yeah, I mean, those are fantastic.
It's the same concept. Like, people who fall in love with the place, they recognize that. One of the places that I used to wear religiously when I was in California when I was a student was Chronic Cellars, Right,
Yep.
Chronic Cellars had a really cool branding program. They had a really cool marketing program, and their names for all of their wines were clever, right? But also, even just down to Virginia, like I had a fleece for Barrel Oak, and it was just a logo, and it's a very distinguishable logo. To the point where if I was in the supermarket, I'd always get like one or two people that would be like, "I love that winery."
Yeah, I mean,
Just
well,
like
that also plays into the Chateau Maryland thing with the dog
Right.
instead.
with the
dogs and
cat,
cats.
yeah.
Dogs. Well, yeah. Yeah,
You know,
for sure.
But again, you're right. I love Barrel Oak's label and their brand. They've done a great job with it. And that's something we should really at some point talk about more. Is like wineries that are doing brands that are not just creating wine and making a tasting room and
then
selling
having a
wine.
logo, and then it's all kind of
Yeah.
separate, and
No,
it's not.
they're creating a brand. And that's
Yeah.
what I think. I think that's what you and Jay are doing over
Yeah.
at Petite Domaine.
That-
Fantastic. Well done.
That's what they do at Chateau Maryland.
That's what Kenny and Emily do.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody wonders why the beer industry almost beat out the wine industry. It's because the beer industry is, one, it's cheaper to produce. It's like 20 cents a glass to produce
Mm-hmm.
beer, right? We don't quite do that. It's like $3 for a glass of wine most
Mm-hmm.
times. But the beer industry markets. They market well. They can, every brewery has their own vibe. They have their own
They're
thing.
storytellers, and it comes back to the positive story. Like they have a beer line, right? And then, like you said, there's fun names. I remember there's a brewery right next to where my husband and I used to live in Quantico, and it's called Barley Naked.
Yeah.
And it's basically like the lower half of a woman is curved, and then there's like barley kind of coming out of it, right? Cool. They had a beer called Hop Naked, and they just had like beers that had that whole vibe.
One of my
It's like-
favorite breweries, Adroit Theory.
Mm-hmm.
They do, it's heavy music. You walk in the tasting room,
Mm-hmm.
it's heavy metal, and then Bob Ross on the TVs, which is just fun. But their labels are well intentioned. They pick a theme. They do Dune and GI Joes and Transformers, and then they do Vikings and Samurais. They just pick a theme, and they have artists. Barrel Brewery down in Asheville, North Carolina. They're finally starting to do wine too, and they're Barrel Brewery was horror. That was like their thing. Like it was horror movies and monsters and like this very cool art with crows and ravens and skulls. But it resonated with the young consumer. They grabbed up and they became not only just a brewery and now a winery, but they also became a brand, a clothing brand where their gift shop opens 2 hours before their tasting room does every day. And they have to put a sign up by like 3 o'clock in the afternoon. Sorry, we're sold out for the day. That's what breweries do well, is my point.
Yeah, well, they're
wineries don't.
okay, and this also comes back to your whole thing where like wineries kind of got up and like got full of themselves, and breweries were having fun.
Right.
You always say that wineries need to have more fun. If we take ourselves and not in every situation, because if you want to be a serious winery, go ahead and be intentional and everything. But there's also the fact that like not everybody can be a fine winery. Have fun.
Right. So I guess
Well, that's the point with the shortly lived, well hung vineyards.
Yeah.
Right? I don't know what happened to them, but that was fun for a few minutes, and then all of a sudden they were gone. Right? I feel like the going back to Chronic Cellars, they were that mentality. It was everything was a play on words. They Chronic Cellars, right? It was rumored that they had a grow op behind the vineyards, right? And that was why they were called not cellars, like they were selling things, but like Delaplane cellars, right?
great-
Stuff like that.
another great winery that has a good brand that people really enjoy, and they're very serious. Bonnie Doon Vineyards.
Yep.
It's got Bonnie Doon does the really classic, wine label.
La Cigare Volant.
Yeah, the
But there's
UFO
wings.
crazy. Yep.
Yeah. And it's this very nice, like, traditional French wine label, but there's a UFO beaming vines out of the vineyard or something, and people love it. They go for that. So there's a balance that the wine industry never seems to do. And so I guess if the takeaway today from this episode is, THC wines and people
THC drinks, not wines.
THC drinks
Yeah.
and people exploring these other products and what that's going to do to long term, and the rise of sparkling wine thanks to people like Shai and Jay.
And consumers, thanks for continuing to buy sparkling
there's
wines
that,
too. Like,
not being afraid to spend that money on that price point, I think is very important.
it's also like the change in mentality of champagne or sparkling wines only being for celebration now. Like if you only buy it used to be only bought and enjoyed on New Year's Eve or on festivities, but now it's something that the market has completely done a great job in shifting that idea that it needs to be celebratory. No, every time you open a bottle is celebratory, right?
That's right. And I like that. I like that concept. So you've got these trends that are carving out their own spots in the tiny little segment that is wine, and you've got sparkling wine and consumers willing to pay that money for that price point.
But they're not drinking as much, so that is a little bit more approachable.
Yeah, so, and I think those things are going to continue, and I think we're going to expand upon... I don't think the specialty products of the alcohol industry will truly stabilize and become its own segment. It'll always be an offshoot segment. That's just always been my takeaway. They're fun products one time, maybe two times. But, sparkling wine, definitely here to stay. Growing season, pretty mediocre, I'd say. It was mediocre.
Expectation for next season?
It's hard to gauge that. They're calling for a very cold winter, but the woolly worms would call for a very mild winter.
Every single woolly bear I've seen is only like 3 weeks of cold, and the rest of it is going to be nice and brown, right?
Well, we saw the temperatures drop in the middle of harvest, and it just stalled ripening for a month.
And then we're having 70 degrees this week, right? So
Wednesday, 74 degrees.
Yep. So like it's really funny. Like, never judge the winter based on the woolly bears. I saw 3 black ones.
I love that we progressed to wives' tales.
I saw 3 all black ones today. So if I judge it based on what I've seen on the,
I've seen more winemakers post about
my goodness,
woolly bears and the winters and their predictions, and I'm just like, guys, you're supposed to be people of science.
Well, here's the thing: is like we've been way overdue for like my first year in Virginia was 2015, and that was the last time that I've seen snow of that magnitude.
Yeah, it seems like we've had such a mild winter by comparison since
sprinkling here, and maybe like I remember talking to somebody about it like 2 years ago, and they were saying it's really been a really good year for snow days, and I'm like, no. I've been here for 10 years, and the 1 year that it was actually snowy was 2015.
Wow, we did not have the same winters.
I mean, I moved to the mountains for snow, and I looked at my husband and I was like, where's the freaking snow? Or did you hide it when we moved this direction?
I had 4 feet of snow last winter.
You had 4 feet.
I don't know what
you're
you
also
guys are
near
talking
You're also up on
a
you're up on a mountain.
I live on an actual mountain,
right?
Not an imaginary mountain.
Well, I'm down in I'm in Fairfax County where we don't have much. I mean, yes, over the accumulation there was 4 feet of snow, 5 feet of snow over the
I didn't have to go to work for 2 days.
Yeah, I didn't have to go to work for a week and change in 2015. They were piled up maybe 7-8 feet high.
Yeah.
Oh yeah,
And that was for me. That was my first introduction to a Virginia winter, and I was like, I am stoked for this. I went out and bought snow boots. I used them for the first time in 10 years last year.
So, predictions for the growing season next year.
The woolly bear is all over the place and is lying to you.
Yeah, there's just a lot of them this year, which is interesting. I've noticed that.
There's a lot more of them I've noticed.
I heard the spotted lanternflies are calling them in.
Probably. There is a weird symbiotic relationship between that is obvious to even consumers, which is yellow jackets working and bees working with the spotted lanternfly
because of the honeydew.
Because of the honeydew. It used to be the ants would gather at the honeydew, which is an excretion that the spotted lanternfly has, and it looks like honeydew juice, and it's sticky. And the ants would come out and drink that, eat that, and then the bees would eventually come in. Well, this year, what's crazy is you see spotted lanternflies. Be careful flicking them away on the vines during harvest, because chances are there's a yellow jacket like not far, if not riding the spotted lanternfly.
I've gotten stung 3 times this year because I swatted.
Yeah, because they're not just the spotted lanternfly. There's this weird symbiotic relationship between the two. So I don't know what's going to happen with spotted lanternfly. I think it's definitely going to be a scourge, and it's definitely going to ruin the vineyards, and we're in trouble with that.
Well, you said that they were seeing a decline up north where
They
started.
said they saw,
but then there was
immediate resurgence this year. So there's that. We definitely don't need a cold winter. We do not need a drastically cold winter with what spotted lanternfly is doing it.
No.
On top of the drought conditions.
Yep.
So I would say next year, if I had to, I would say it's probably going to be a spotty year.
I would say that I'd make the same bold prediction that we're going to have another very similar year to this year, depending on what is actually happening with the fruit and also with the vines. You know, they're not shutting down properly. They're not pushing carbs to the right areas. They're not doing whatever they need to be doing in order to shut down properly. You know, they're seeing that they're changing the quality of the fruit, right? They're changing the quality of the fruit. Therefore, they're changing the quality of the wines, the red wines that I've tasted in the cellar. And you can attest to this too, Jake, is that probably we're seeing less bold, less of that like glucose characteristic. Well, there's less glucose in your reds, so you have these drier red wines that don't have that like fruit expression.
Less fruit forward wines. Yeah, that is something that, you know, I was tasting the wines again today, and I said it feels like it's starting to come back. Maybe it's just young wines being young.
Yeah.
I definitely, it's not as intense as it normally is.
Yeah.
So I think that's an effect.
And we'll see. I mean, if that continues to be the thing, and we don't come up with a solution to help combat spotted lanternfly, I think that we're going to continue to see more vintages like this. Granted,
it's great for sparkling.
We'll see what happens during frost and bloom and rain and wind and colour.
We actually have weather here.
Yes, and it happens almost every year. I mean, without fail, going back almost to 2016. Without fail, I have never seen a dry bloom. There's always been one variety that gets hammered with color or with shatter. And whether that be Traminette, whether that be Sauvignon Blanc, whether that be...
Traminette.
Yeah, I know. I'm not doing anything with Traminette.
Nobody should. Somebody tried to give me free Traminette this year, and I was like, no.
Yeah.
Like, you couldn't pay me to make that. Like, just drop it and rip out your vines. Anyway, sorry.
All right. On that note, growing season, not great this year, not going to be great next year, no expectation.
Questionable, spotty.
Okay.
Spotty.
Yeah, there's going to be benefits to different techniques and different styles of winemaking.
It's going to be a challenging year going forward with spotted lanternfly and weird climate patterns here.
Yeah, I think that reds, depending on your site, I think that it was going to be, until we can figure out SLF, then we're going to start seeing what you alluded to in earlier podcasts, is that Virginia does white wines very well, right? And based on your site, maybe you'll be finding some areas that are going to be doing reds better. But my hot take, my fringe idea is that, you know, we're going to start seeing reds really be impacted by spotted lanternfly. It'll really be interesting to see if we can find something that will get rid of them in a beneficial way. Like we're already seeing people working with, you know, the zombie fungus.
Oh, yeah.
But that's non-discriminatory. That goes after everything. And
World War Z, welcome to it.
it works. Oh yeah, The Last of Us.
Yeah.
Right.
Look, all these things are great, and if you're a consumer and you're listening to us talk about spotted lanternfly, just go ahead and Google it and do your own research and try not to
squish it.
Yeah, squish it. Do your part, but try not to bug your local winemaker with questions about spotted lanternfly. We're all exasperated by it.
Plant milkweed in your gardens.
Plant milkweed.
Yeah.
Maybe we need a resurgence of milkweed, which will bring in the monarchs.
Oh, yeah.
So, we've covered a lot today.
We've covered a lot, yeah.
This is super long podcast
Don't
for
worry,
y'all.
I have to trim out. We're fine.
But we have we do have some exciting things coming up.
Yep.
We are doing the season 2. Shai will be returning with
Yes.
Jay for Petit Domaine and all the things sparkling. So we're really going to deep dive into that. And Jill and I will hardly talk because it's so much information. It's a lot of fun. We're going to be talking to some folks about different fringy topics. We're really excited that marketing trends are starting to give the nod that the wine industry is too pretentious, and that's why the younger wine drinkers aren't coming in. And we're going to talk about some crazy wine laws and how distributors really are still the enemy, and that's why you're not getting delicious wine to your door.
Yeah.
We've got some interesting other winemakers to bring on,
Some viticulturalists.
and tapping on some historical stuff too.
Yeah.
Did I cover it all, Jill?
Almost.
I won't make all of the announcements.
Okay, well, we're good.
Okay. So I'm Jake Plottinger.
I'm Jill Smedley, and we're here with Shai Van Gelder,
Thanks for having me on.
Thanks for coming out again.
and this is Wine Fringe.